There is a hunger in you that knows things before you do. It knows who you will think about at 3 in the morning when sleep refuses you. It knows whose name will make your chest tighten before your mind registers why. It knows which face in a crowded room will stop you mid-sentence, mid-breath, mid-thought. This hunger does not consult your logic. It does not ask your permission. It moves through you like weather, like instinct, like something older than the person you think you are. And you have been taught to call this hunger by simple names: attraction, chemistry, love, as if these words could contain what is actually happening, as if what moves in you when you see them, when you hear their voice, when they look at you with that particular kind of seeing, could be reduced to biology or romance or the predictable mechanics of human pairing. But Carl Jung understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. He understood that desire is never just about the other person. That the one you cannot stop thinking about, the one who makes you feel like you are finally being seen, the one whose presence makes you feel more alive than you have felt in years, they are not showing you who they are. They are showing you who you are. Or, more precisely, they are showing you who you have refused to be. What you want in them is what you have lost in yourself. What you fear in them is what you have buried. What you seek in them is what you exiled years ago when you learned that certain parts of you were too much, too wild, too dangerous, too honest, too hungry to be allowed into the light. And now those parts are walking around in another person's body, and you are calling it love. But it is not love. Not yet. It is recognition. And recognition, when it arrives with this kind of intensity, is always terrifying. Because if what you want in them is actually what you have denied in yourself, then the work is not to possess them. The work is not to convince them to love you, to choose you, to complete you. The work is to look at what you see in them and ask the question that most people will do anything to avoid asking. What am I seeing in them that I refuse to see in myself? What quality, what energy, what way of being have I projected onto them because I cannot bear to own it in myself? Jung called this projection, but projection is not just a psychological term. Projection is the mechanism by which we organize our entire emotional lives. It is how we avoid ourselves while believing we are pursuing connection. It is how we turn every relationship into a mirror and then spend years angry at the reflection, never realizing that what we are looking at is not them, it is us, distorted, disowned, desperate to be seen. And the person you are obsessed with, the one who occupies your thoughts like an invader, like a haunting, like something you cannot exercise no matter how hard you try, they did not create this hunger. They triggered it. They walked into the room and their presence activated something in you that has been waiting, dormant, patient, ready to explode the moment it found a shape to attach itself to. And now you are convinced that you need them, that your life will not make sense without them. That if you could just be with them, if you could just have them, if they could just see you the way you see them, everything would finally click into place. But Jung is saying stop, look closer, because what you are feeling is not about them. What you are feeling is about you encountering yourself. You are meeting the part of you that you locked away, the part you were told was unacceptable, the part that was too much for your family, too dangerous for your culture, too honest for the life you were supposed to live. And now that part is walking toward you in the shape of another human being. And you think you want them, but what you want is yourself, whole, integrated, no longer divided. This is not romantic. This is not the story you were told about love. This is the truth that lives underneath every obsession, every heartbreak, every relationship that felt like it was going to save you and then destroyed you instead. The person you cannot stop wanting is holding a piece of you, and the only way to stop needing them is to take it back. But first, you have to see what you have been refusing to see. You have to go down into the basement of yourself and look at what you locked away. And most people will not do this. Most people will spend their entire lives chasing the projection. They will move from person to person, relationship to relationship, convinced that the next one will be different, that the next one will finally be the one who completes them, never realizing that what they are chasing is not out there. It is in here, in the basement, in the parts of themselves they buried so long ago they forgot they were ever whole. Jung spent his entire life trying to teach people how to stop running, how to turn around and face what they have been avoiding, how to descend into the parts of themselves that terrify them and discover that what lives down there is not a monster. It is the self they were always supposed to be, the self they exiled, the self that has been knocking on the door of their consciousness through every inexplicable attraction, every irrational desire, every person they have ever loved with a desperation that felt like drowning. And the message is always the same. You are not looking for them. You are looking for you. And the hunger that knows your name is not leading you to another person. It is leading you home, to the parts of yourself that you left behind when you learned that being whole was too dangerous, too much, too real. The hunger is the part of you that refuses to stay buried, and it will keep pulling you toward people who embody what you have disowned, until you finally stop and ask, what am I really seeking? What am I really afraid of? And what would it mean to stop looking for it in them and start reclaiming it in myself? This is where the work begins, not in the pursuit of the beloved, but in the recognition that the beloved is a mirror, and what you see in them is what you need to become, not for them, for you. Because you were never supposed to be half a person looking for another half. You were supposed to be whole. And the hunger you feel is not evidence that something is missing. It is evidence that something is trying to return, something you buried, something that refuses to stay dead, something that has been calling your name your entire life, and it is time to let it in. There is a part of you that lives in the basement of your psyche. You put it there years ago, not because it was evil, not because it was wrong, but because it was too much, too wild, too intense, too honest, too sexual, too angry, too soft, too hungry, too real. And the people around you, your parents, your teachers, your culture, your religion, the invisible network of expectations that wrapped around you before you could speak, they could not hold it. They could not tolerate the fullness of what you were. And so you learned to split yourself. You learned to keep the acceptable parts visible and lock the rest away. And you were so young when you did this that you do not even remember doing it. You do not remember the moment you decided that your rage was dangerous. You do not remember the day you learned that your desire was shameful. You do not remember when you started believing that your softness was weakness, that your ambition was selfish, that your need for attention was pathetic, that your hunger for touch was desperate. You just remember that at some point, you stopped being whole. You stopped being the child who felt everything, who wanted everything, who expressed everything without filter or fear. And you became the person who knew how to behave, how to be good, how to be acceptable, how to survive. But the part of you that you locked away did not die. It went into the basement, and it has been there ever since, knocking, pacing, waiting, growing stronger in the dark. And you have spent your life pretending it is not there. You have built your identity on the parts of yourself that are allowed. The responsible self, the rational self, the self that goes to work and pays the bills and maintains relationships and presents a coherent story to the world. And this self is real, but it is not the whole truth. because underneath it, in the basement, there is another self, the disowned self, the exiled self, the self that is made of everything you decided was unacceptable. And here is what Jung understood that most people do not. What you lock in the basement does not stay in the basement. It comes back. It always comes back, not as a thought, not as a memory, but as a presence in the world outside you. It comes back as the person who enrages you, the person who fascinates you, the person you cannot stop thinking about, the person whose very existence feels like an accusation, like a revelation, like a mirror you did not ask to look into. Because what you refuse to see in yourself, you will see in others. This is the mechanism of projection. And projection is not a mistake. Projection is the psyche's way of showing you what you need to integrate. The person who triggers you, who makes you lose your composure, who occupies your thoughts with an intensity that feels almost violent, they are not the problem. They are the messenger. They are carrying the part of you that you locked away. And your job is not to destroy them, not to avoid them, not to obsess over them. Your job is to look at what you see in them and recognize it as yours. If you are enraged by someone's arrogance, look at your own discerned confidence. If you are obsessed with someone's freedom, look at your own buried wildness. If you are repulsed by someone's neediness, look at your own denied vulnerability. If you are drawn to someone's coldness, look at your own exiled detachment. What you see in them is what you have refused to own in yourself. And the intensity of your reaction is the measure of how much energy you have invested in keeping that part of you locked away. Jung told a story about a man who came to him consumed with hatred for a colleague. The colleague was arrogant, ambitious, ruthless, everything the man despised. And Jung listened to him rage about this person for weeks. And then Jung said something that stopped the man cold. He said, "That is you. That is the part of you that wants recognition, that wants to win, that wants to dominate. You buried it because you were taught that ambition is selfish, that wanting to be seen is shameful, that power is corrupt. But it did not die. It is alive in him, and you hate him because he's living the life you are afraid to live." And the man was furious. He denied it. He insisted that he was nothing like his colleague, that he was humble, self-effacing, content. But Jung did not argue. He just waited. And slowly, over months, the man began to see it. He began to notice the moments when he wanted to speak up but stayed silent, the moments when he wanted to claim his work but let someone else take credit, the moments when he felt the surge of ambition rise in him and immediately shamed it back down. He began to see that he was not humble. He was terrified, terrified of his own hunger for recognition, terrified of his own capacity for ambition, terrified that if he let himself want what he wanted, he would become the thing he despised. But what he despised was not the colleague. What he despised was the part of himself he had exiled, and the colleague was just holding it for him, reflecting it back, giving it a face. And the hatred he felt was not moral judgment. It was the psyche's way of saying, "Look, this is yours, this belongs to you, and you need to take it back." This is what lives in the basement. Not evil, not darkness, but the unlived life, the disowned qualities, the parts of you that were too much for the world you were born into. And the basement is not just filled with the qualities you judge as negative. The basement is also filled with your power, your creativity, your sexuality, your joy, your wildness, your truth. Because anything that threatens the stability of the persona, the acceptable self, goes into the basement. And most people spend their entire lives defending the persona, keeping the basement locked, pretending that the knocking they hear is not real. But it is real, and it will not stop. Because the psyche is not interested in your comfort. The psyche is interested in your wholeness, and wholeness requires integration. It requires you to go down into the basement and look at what you locked away. It requires you to open the door and let the exiled parts of yourself speak. And it requires you to stop seeing them as enemies and start seeing them as lost pieces of yourself that have been waiting, patient and relentless, for you to come home. And this is terrifying, because what lives in the basement is not polite. It is not reasonable. It does not care about your excuses or your justifications or your carefully constructed identity. It just wants to be seen. It wants to be acknowledged. It wants to be integrated. And it will keep showing up in the faces of the people who trigger you, the people who fascinate you, the people who make you feel like you are losing your mind, until you finally stop and say, "Okay, I see you. You are mine, and I am ready to take you back."
But most people are not ready. Most people will spend their entire lives avoiding the basement. They will project their disowned qualities onto others and then spend years reacting to those projections, never realizing that what they are fighting is not out there. It is in here, in the parts of themselves they refuse to face. And the tragedy is not that they fail to integrate. The tragedy is that they never even realize what they are running from. They just know that something is wrong, that something is missing, that no matter how much they achieve, how much they acquire, how many people they surround themselves with, there is still a part of them that feels incomplete. And that incompleteness is not a lack. It is the self in the basement, knocking on the door, saying, "I am still here. I have always been here, and I will not leave until you let me in." There is someone who lives inside you. You have been searching for them your entire life. Every person you have ever loved was an echo of this figure. Every person who has ever broken you was wearing their face. This is not your type. This is not a pattern. This is not the result of childhood wounds or unresolved trauma, though those things are part of it. This is something deeper. This is the soul's other, the interior beloved, the one who lives at the center of your psyche and whom you have been trying to find in every body, every face, every voice that has ever made you feel like you were finally home.
Jung called this figure the anima in men and the animus in women. But these are not just psychological terms. They are not categories. They are lived realities. They are the inner figures who organize your desires, shape your fantasies, and determine who you will fall for and why. And most people never realize that these figures exist. They just know that they are drawn to certain people with an intensity that feels like fate, like they were made for each other, like the universe conspired to bring them together. And they are right, but not in the way they think. Because the person you are drawn to is not random. The person who makes your chest ache, who makes you feel like you are finally being seen, who makes you feel more alive than you have felt in years, they are not showing you who they are. They are showing you who you need to become. They are embodying the qualities you have exiled, the parts of yourself you were taught you are not allowed to be. And you are calling it love, but it is not love yet. It is projection. It is recognition. It is the psyche's way of showing you what you need to integrate. For men, traditionally, this figure is feminine. She is made of everything you were taught that men are not supposed to be: soft, emotional, intuitive, receptive, mysterious, vulnerable. You buried these qualities because you learned that men do not feel, that men do not cry, that men do not need, that men are supposed to be strong and rational and controlled. And so you split yourself. You kept the acceptable masculinity visible, the strength, the logic, the independence, and you locked the rest away.
But it did not disappear. It became the interior woman, the one who lives inside you, the one who knows things your conscious mind does not, the one who feels things you are not allowed to feel, the one who wants connection, intimacy, softness, beauty. And now she is out there, walking around in another person's body. And you see her, and your chest cracks open, and you think you need her. You think you cannot live without her. You think if you could just be with her, everything would make sense. But Jung is saying she is not out there. She is in here.
She is the part of you that you exiled when you learned that being a man meant being half a person. And what you are feeling is not desire for her. What you are feeling is your own psyche trying to reunite with itself. You are seeing the feminine in her because you cannot see it in yourself. And the work is not to possess her. The work is to integrate her, to bring the interior woman back into consciousness, to stop projecting your own soul onto another person and start living the fullness of what you are, rational and intuitive, strong and soft, independent and connected, not half, whole. For women, traditionally, this figure is masculine. He is made of everything you were taught that women are not supposed to be: powerful, certain, aggressive, authoritative, decisive, clear. You buried these qualities because you learned that women are supposed to be warm, nurturing, accommodating, available. That women who want power are threatening. That women who are certain are arrogant. That women who express anger are hysterical. And so you split yourself. You kept the acceptable femininity visible, the warmth, the care, the receptivity, and you locked the rest away. But it did not disappear. It became the interior man, the one who knows what he wants and does not apologize for it, the one who can say no without guilt, the one who can stand in his own authority and not collapse under the weight of everyone else's needs. And now he is out there, walking around in another person's body, and you see him and something in you recognizes itself, and you think you need him. You think he will complete you. You think if he could just choose you, if he could just see you, if you could just be with him, you would finally feel whole. But Jung is saying he is not out there. He is in here. He is the part of you that you buried when you learned that being a woman meant being half a person. And what you are feeling is not need for him. What you are feeling is your own psyche trying to reclaim itself. You are seeing the masculine in him because you cannot own it in yourself. And the work is not to win him. The work is to integrate him, to bring the interior man back into consciousness, to stop giving your power away to another person and start embodying it yourself. Warm and clear, nurturing and decisive, connected and self-possessed, not half, whole.
But here is where it gets more complex, because this is not about gender. This is not about men needing to integrate the feminine and women needing to integrate the masculine, as if those categories were fixed and stable. This is about the fact that every human being is taught to exile parts of themselves based on what their culture deems acceptable. And those exiled parts become the interior beloved, the figure you are searching for, the one you keep meeting in every person who makes you feel like you are finally home. And the qualities that make up this figure are specific to you. They are shaped by your history, your wounds, your culture, your family. If you were taught that anger is unacceptable, the interior beloved will be made of rage. If you were taught that desire is shameful, the interior beloved will be made of hunger. If you were taught that vulnerability is weakness, the interior beloved will be made of softness. If you were taught that confidence is arrogance, the interior beloved will be made of certainty. Whatever you exiled, that is what the interior beloved holds, and that is what you will seek in every person who makes your heart race. Jung told a story about a woman who kept falling for unavailable men, men who were emotionally distant, men who could not commit, men who kept her at arm's length. And she came to him devastated, convinced that she was cursed, that she was choosing wrong, that something in her was broken.
And Jung listened. And then he said, "You are not looking for a man. You are looking for your own detachment, your own ability to say no, your own capacity to be unavailable. You were taught that women must be warm, open, giving, always available. And so you buried the part of you that can be cold, that can withdraw, that can protect herself, that can say, 'I do not need you.' And now you are obsessed with men who have that quality, not because you need them to give it to you, but because you need to become it. And the woman was silent, because she knew it was true. She had spent her entire life being the one who gave, who accommodated, who adjusted, who made herself available. And she was exhausted. And the men she was drawn to were not unavailable because they were damaged or afraid. They were unavailable because they had the quality she had exiled, the capacity to be separate, to be self-contained, to not need. And she was not in love with them. She was in love with what they represented. She was in love with the part of herself she had buried. And the work was not to change them, not to make them available, not to win them over. The work was to become what she was seeking, to reclaim her own detachment, her own boundaries, her own ability to be whole without needing anyone to complete her. This is what the interior beloved is. This is why you want who you want, not because of who they are, but because of who you are not yet allowing yourself to be.
And the person you are obsessed with, the one who occupies your thoughts like an invader, the one whose presence makes you feel like you are finally alive, they are not the answer. They are the question. They are asking you, what are you seeing in me that you refuse to see in yourself? What quality am I holding for you? What part of you have you exiled? And when will you stop looking for it in me and start reclaiming it in yourself? Because the interior beloved is not meant to stay interior. The interior beloved is meant to be integrated, to be brought into consciousness, to be lived. And the way you do this is not by finding the perfect person who embodies all the qualities you have disowned. The way you do this is by recognizing that every person you have ever been drawn to is showing you a piece of yourself, and your job is not to possess them. Your job is to become them, to embody what they represent, to stop projecting your unlived life onto another person and start living it yourself. And this is the hardest work there is, because it requires you to let go of the fantasy that there is someone out there who will complete you, the fantasy that love is about finding your other half, the fantasy that you are incomplete and need another person to make you whole. Jung is saying you are already whole, you just do not know it yet. Because you have been taught to split yourself, to exile the parts of you that do not fit. And now those parts are walking around in other people's bodies, and you are calling it love. But it is not love. It is hunger. It is recognition. It is the psyche's desperate attempt to reunite with itself. And the only way to stop needing them is to become them, to integrate what they represent, to bring the interior beloved out of the shadows and into your life, not as a person you possess, but as a quality you embody. And when you do this, when you finally integrate the interior beloved, something shifts. You stop looking for them out there, not because you stop desiring, but because you realize that what you were seeking was never theirs to give. It was always yours. And now that you have reclaimed it, you can finally love another person, not as savior, not as completion, not as the one who will make you whole, but as human, as other, as themselves. And that love that comes from wholeness rather than need, is the only love that lasts. You meet someone and they feel like fate, like the universe reached into your chest and pulled out the exact shape of what you have been missing and placed it in front of you in the form of a human being. And you look at them and something in you says, yes, this one, this is the one. You do not know why, you cannot explain it, but you know, in your body, in your bones, in the part of you that is older than language. And you call it chemistry. You call it connection. You call it love at first sight. But what you are actually experiencing is projection, and projection feels exactly like love until it does not.
Because here is what is happening in that moment of recognition. You are not seeing them. You are seeing yourself. Or more precisely, you are seeing the part of yourself that you locked away reflected back to you in the shape of another person. They are not special. Or they are special, but not in the way you think. They are special because they have triggered something in you that has been dormant, waiting, ready to explode the moment it found a container. And now it has. And you think the container is the point. You think you need them. You think your life will not make sense without them. You think if you could just be with them, if they could just love you back, if you could just have them, everything would finally click into place. But Jung is saying, stop, look closer. Because what you are feeling is not about them. What you are feeling is you encountering yourself. You are meeting the exiled part of your psyche, the part you disowned years ago when you learned that being fully yourself was too dangerous, too much, too real. And now that part is walking toward you in the shape of another person, and you think you want them. But what you want is the quality they embody, the energy they carry, the way of being that you see in them and cannot see in yourself.
If you were drawn to their confidence, ask yourself, where is my own confidence? If you are obsessed with their freedom, ask yourself, where is my own freedom? If you are addicted to their intensity, ask yourself, where is my own intensity? If you are fascinated by their certainty, ask yourself, where is my own certainty? What you see in them is what you have buried in yourself, and the attraction you feel is not desire for them, it is desire for the part of yourself you have been refusing to live. This is projection, and projection is not a mistake. Projection is the psyche's way of showing you what needs to be integrated. The person you are drawn to is a mirror. They are reflecting back the qualities you have exiled, and your job is not to possess them. Your job is to recognize what you are seeing and take it back, to withdraw the projection, to stop looking for those qualities in them and start embodying them in yourself. But most people do not do this. Most people mistake projection for love. They meet someone who triggers this recognition and they think this is it. This is the person I have been waiting for. This is the one who will finally understand me, complete me, save me. And they pour everything into the relationship. They invest all their hope, all their need, all their hunger. And for a while, it works. For a while, the projection holds. The other person seems perfect. They seem like everything you have ever wanted. They seem like the answer. But projection cannot last. Because projection is not based on reality. Projection is based on what you need to see. And the person you are projecting onto is not who you think they are. They are a human being, flawed, limited, incapable of carrying the weight of your unlived life. And eventually, inevitably, the projection collapses. They do something that does not fit the image. They disappoint you. They fail to be who you needed them to be, and you are devastated. Not because they changed, but because you are finally seeing them clearly for the first time, and they are not the God you made them. They are just a person. And this collapse feels like betrayal. It feels like they lied to you, deceived you, pretended to be someone they were not. But they did not lie. You did. You lied to yourself. You projected qualities onto them that they never claimed to have. You saw in them what you needed to see. And when the reality of who they actually are could no longer be ignored, you felt betrayed. But the betrayal was not theirs. The betrayal was yours. You betrayed yourself by refusing to see that what you wanted was never theirs to give. Jung had a patient who was in love with a man she barely knew. She had met him twice. They had exchanged a few words, and she was convinced that he was her soulmate, that he understood her in a way no one else ever had, that he was the one. And she came to Jung desperate, asking how she could make him love her back. And Jung said, "Tell me about him. What is he like?" And she began to describe him. And as she spoke, Jung realized that she was not describing the man at all. She was describing herself. Or more precisely, she was describing the qualities she had disowned in herself. The man was quiet, introspective, self-contained, and she was loud, extroverted, always performing for others. The man was serious, thoughtful, reflective, and she was scattered, impulsive, reactive. And Jung said, "You are not in love with him. You are in love with the part of yourself you see in him, the part that can be quiet, the part that can be still, the part that does not need an audience." And the woman was furious. She insisted that she knew what she felt, that it was real, that Jung was wrong. But Jung did not argue. He just waited. And slowly, over weeks, she began to see it. She began to notice that her obsession with the man had nothing to do with who he actually was. She did not know him. She had constructed an entire fantasy around a few brief interactions. And what she was fantasizing about was not him. It was the life she could live if she integrated the qualities he represented. The capacity to be alone without loneliness, the capacity to be still without boredom, the capacity to be self-contained without isolation. She did not need him. She needed to become what she saw in him. This is what projection does. It takes the parts of yourself you have exiled and places them onto another person. And then it tells you that you need that person, that you cannot live without them, that they are the key to your happiness, your wholeness, your life. And you believe it because the hunger is real. The longing is real. The sense that something is missing is real. But what is missing is not them. What is missing is you, the parts of yourself you locked away, the qualities you disowned, the life you have not been living. And the work of withdrawing projection is the hardest work there is, because it requires you to let go of the fantasy. It requires you to stop believing that another person can complete you. It requires you to look at what you see in them and recognize it as yours. And it requires you to ask yourself, if I am not looking for this quality in them, where is it in me? If I am not waiting for them to give me freedom, how do I give it to myself? If I am not hoping they will make me feel alive, how do I make myself feel alive? And this is terrifying, because as long as you are projecting, you have an excuse. You can say, I am incomplete because I have not found the right person. I am unhappy because they do not love me back. I am stuck because they will not give me what I need. But when you withdraw the projection, you lose the excuse. You are left with yourself, and you have to face the fact that you were the one who has been withholding from yourself. You are the one who has been refusing to live fully. You are the one who has been waiting for permission, for validation, for someone else to make you whole. And no one is coming. No one can do this for you. The work is yours. But here is what you gain. When you withdraw the projection, when you stop looking for the exiled parts of yourself in another person, you become free. Free to see them as they actually are. Free to love them without need. Free to be with them without clinging. Because you are no longer using them to avoid yourself. You are no longer turning them into the answer. You are whole. And from that wholeness, you can finally meet another person, not as savior, not as completion, but as human, as other, as themselves. And that meeting, that love that comes from wholeness rather than lack, is the only love that does not destroy, because it is not based on projection, it is based on reality. You see them, they see you, and neither of you is carrying the weight of the other's unlived life. You are both whole, and you are choosing to be together not because you need each other, but because you want each other. And that wanting, that clean desire that comes from integration rather than projection, is what love actually is. Not the fever dream of recognition, not the desperation of need, but the choice to be with another person because you are already complete and you want to share that completeness with them. This is what Jung is offering. Not a path to finding the right person, but a path to becoming the right person, to integrating what you have projected, to reclaiming the exiled parts of yourself, to stopping the endless search for completion in another body, and discovering that completion was never external. It was always internal, waiting for you to turn around and see it, waiting for you to withdraw the projection, waiting for you to stop running and finally come home. Your body knows things your mind refuses to acknowledge. It knows before you think, before you decide, before you construct the rational explanation for why you feel what you feel. Your body registers the presence of certain people as if they are weather, as if they carry charge, as if the air around them is different. And you call this attraction, but it is not that simple. Because what your body is responding to is not random. It is not just biology. It is not just chemistry. Your body is speaking, and it is speaking about you. Sexual desire is a language. It is the unconscious making itself known through the body. And what arouses you, what makes your breath catch, what makes your skin electric, is not arbitrary. It is precise, it is specific, and it is pointing toward something. Not toward the person you desire, toward the part of yourself you have repressed. Because arousal is always about integration. What turns you on is what you have turned away from, and your body is trying to tell you this is what you need. Not them, this quality, this energy, this way of being. If you were taught that anger is unacceptable, you will be aroused by aggression. If you were taught that softness is weakness, you will be aroused by vulnerability. If you were taught that power is dangerous, you will be aroused by dominance. If you were taught that surrender is failure, you will be aroused by submission. Your desire is showing you what you need to integrate, and your body is the messenger. But most people do not listen to the message. They just act on the desire. They pursue the person who arouses them. They try to possess them. They try to have them. And they think that having them will satisfy the hunger. But it will not. Because the hunger is not for them. The hunger is for the quality they represent. And you cannot possess a quality by possessing a person. You can only embody it.
Jung understood this. He understood that sexual desire is not just about reproduction or pleasure. It is about the psyche trying to become whole. The erotic is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. It is where the exiled parts of yourself become visible, where the repressed material rises to the surface, where the body says, "Look, this is what you need. This is what you have been refusing, and you need to integrate it." There is a man who comes to Jung unable to feel sexual desire for his wife. He loves her, he respects her, but he cannot want her, and he is tormented by this. He thinks something is wrong with him, and Jung listens. And then he asks, "Who do you desire?" And the man describes the women he is drawn to, women who are cold, distant, unavailable, women who do not need him, women who do not soften for him. And Jung says, you are not aroused by unavailability because you are broken. You are aroused by unavailability because you have disowned your own capacity to be separate. You were taught that men must provide, must protect, must be needed, and you buried the part of you that does not need to be needed, that can be self-contained, that can be separate. And now you are only aroused by women who embody that quality, not because you need them, but because you need to become them.
And the man is silent, because he knows it is true. His wife needs him. She depends on him. She looks to him for everything. And he cannot desire her because she reflects back the part of him he has over-identified with, the provider, the caretaker, the one who is always available. And the women he desires are showing him the opposite, the capacity to be unavailable, to be self-contained, to not need. And his arousal is not pathology. It is instruction. It is the unconscious saying, this is what you need to integrate. Not by leaving your wife, not by pursuing these women, but by reclaiming your own separateness, your own capacity to say no, your own ability to be whole without being needed. This is what the erotic unconscious does. It shows you what you have repressed through the language of desire. And most people misread the language. They think the desire is telling them to pursue, to have, to possess. But the desire is telling them to integrate, to become, to embody. And the person they desire is not the goal. The person they desire is the map. There is a woman who is only aroused by men who are dangerous, men who are unpredictable, men who might hurt her, men who keep her off balance. And she hates herself for this. She thinks she's broken. She thinks she's choosing wrong. And Jung says, you are not broken. You are aroused by danger because you have disowned your own wildness. You were taught that women must be safe, predictable, controllable, and you buried the part of you that is dangerous.
That is unpredictable. That does not play by the rules. And now you are only aroused by men who embody that quality. Not because you want to be hurt, but because you want to be free. And the woman weeps because she has spent her entire life being good, being careful, being the woman everyone could depend on. And she is exhausted. And the men she is drawn to are not safe, but they are alive. And she is not alive. She is performing aliveness, and her desire is showing her what she needs. Not a dangerous man, but her own danger, her own wildness, her own refusal to be contained. This is the genius of the erotic unconscious. It does not lie. It does not perform. It does not care about what you think you should want. It only cares about what you need. And what you need is always integration, always wholeness, always the reclaiming of what you have exiled. And it will show you through desire, through the people who make your body respond in ways you cannot control, through the fantasies you are ashamed of, through the arousal that does not make rational sense. It is all instruction. It is all the psyche trying to tell you this is what you have buried and you need to bring it back. But here is the danger. You can act out the repressed material through sexuality. You can use another person to touch what you cannot touch in yourself. You can make them carry your basement. And this is not integration. This is displacement. This is using their body as a container for your disowned self. And it will not work, because the other person is not you. They cannot integrate for you. They cannot embody for you. They can only reflect back what you need to see. And if you are using them to avoid the work of integration, you are not getting closer to wholeness. You are getting further away. Jung had a patient who was addicted to affairs. He was married. He loved his wife, but he could not stop sleeping with other women. And he came to Jung convinced that he was a sex addict, that something in him was broken, that he needed to be fixed. And Jung said, "You are not addicted to sex. You are addicted to the feeling of aliveness that comes from transgression. You have been living a life that is too controlled, too acceptable, too safe. And the affairs are the only place where you feel like yourself, where you feel dangerous, where you feel wild. But you are not integrating that wildness. You are just acting it out. And it will never be enough, because what you need is not more affairs. What you need is to bring that wildness into your actual life, to stop compartmentalizing, to stop splitting yourself into the acceptable husband and the secret wild man, and to become whole." And the man did not want to hear this, because it meant he could not keep doing what he was doing. It meant he had to change his life. There is a voice inside you that you have been ignoring your entire life. It is not the voice of reason. It is not the voice of your conditioning. It is not the voice of your parents or your culture or the person you think you are supposed to be. It is older than that, deeper than that. It is the voice of the interior beloved, the soul's other, the one who has been trying to speak to you through your dreams, through your fantasies, through your inexplicable longings, through every person you have ever been obsessed with. And you have been mistaking that voice for the voice of another person. But it is not their voice. It is your own voice calling you home to yourself. Jung discovered this voice during the most terrifying period of his life.
After his break with Freud in 1913, Jung entered what he later called his confrontation with the unconscious. He was having visions, hearing voices, feeling like he was going insane. And he had a choice. He could interpret these experiences as pathology, as psychosis, as breakdown. Or he could interpret them as something else, as a message from the depths of his own psyche, as an invitation to descend. And he chose descent. He developed a practice he called active imagination. It is not meditation. Meditation is about emptying the mind, about achieving stillness, about transcending thought. Active imagination is the opposite. It is about engaging with the contents of the unconscious, about dialoguing with the figures that appear, about asking them who they are and what they want, and listening, not with the rational mind, but with the whole psyche. Jung would sit and allow an image to arise, a figure, a scene, a presence. And instead of analyzing it, instead of trying to understand it intellectually, he would speak to it. He would ask it questions. He would let it respond. And he would record the dialogue, page after page, year after year. And what emerged was the Red Book, a massive, illuminated manuscript that documented his encounter with the figures of his own unconscious. And one of those figures was the interior beloved, the anima, the feminine soul image, who appeared to him and told him things he did not want to hear. She told him his theories were empty. She told him he was performing for an audience. She told him he needed to stop teaching and start living. She told him he was hiding behind his intellect, using his knowledge as a defense against actually feeling anything. And Jung was furious. He argued with her. He told her she was wrong, but she did not back down. She just kept speaking. And slowly, over months, over years, he began to listen. And what she was telling him was the truth. He had been living a half-life. He had been identified with the persona, the respectable psychiatrist,
the successful academic, the man who had the answers, and underneath that persona there was another Jung, a Jung who did not have answers, a Jung who was lost, a Jung who was terrified, a Jung who needed to descend into the chaos of his own psyche and discover what was actually real. And the interior beloved was the guide. She was not gentle, she was not comforting, she was ruthless. She demanded everything. She demanded that he give up the safety of his constructed identity and become who he actually was. And that becoming required him to integrate her, to bring the feminine into his consciousness, to stop projecting it onto the women in his life and start embodying it himself, to feel, to intuit, to surrender, to stop controlling and start receiving. This is what the interior beloved does. She speaks, or he speaks, depending on the structure of your psyche. And what they speak is always the same message. You are living a lie. You are identified with the persona. You are performing a version of yourself that is acceptable, manageable, safe, but it is not you. And I am here to show you what you have buried. I am here to show you what you need to integrate, and I am not going to be polite about it.
And most people do not want to hear this. Most people want the interior beloved to be comforting. They want them to tell them they are doing great, that they are on the right path, that everything is fine. But the interior beloved does not care about your comfort. The interior beloved cares about your wholeness. And wholeness requires the destruction of the persona. It requires you to stop performing and start being. And that is terrifying. Jung told his patients to practice active imagination, to sit in silence and allow a figure to arise, and then to speak to that figure, to ask, "Who are you? What do you want from me? What are you trying to show me?" And to let the figure respond. Not by thinking about what the figure might say, but by allowing the response to arise spontaneously from the unconscious, from the part of you that is not controlled by the ego. But the interior beloved is not just a voice. The interior beloved is also a presence, a felt sense, a knowing that arises in the body. You feel them when you are alone, when you are quiet, when you stop performing and start being. They are the part of you that knows things before you think them, that feels things before you name them, that wants things before you allow yourself to want them. And they will not be silenced. They will keep knocking. They will keep showing up in your dreams. They will keep pulling you toward the people who embody what they represent, until you finally stop and say, "Okay, I hear you. I see you. You are mine, and I am ready to integrate you."
And when you do this, when you integrate the interior beloved, the obsessions stop. Not because you stop desiring, but because you stop projecting. You stop looking for the beloved out there because you have become the beloved in here. And from that place of integration, you can finally love another person. Not as savior, not as completion, but as human, as other, as themselves. And that love that comes from wholeness, is the only love that does not destroy, because it is not based on need, it is based on choice. And choice made from integration rather than lack is what freedom actually is. There comes a moment in the work when you realize that you are not going to find them, the one you have been searching for, the one who will complete you, the one who will make sense of your life. You are not going to find them because they do not exist, not out there. They exist in here. And the search, the endless pursuit, the moving from person to person, hoping that this one will be different, this one will be the answer, it stops. Not because you give up, but because you finally understand what you were actually looking for. You were looking for yourself. And now you are tired. Tired of the chase, tired of the heartbreak, tired of the pattern. And in that exhaustion, something shifts. You stop running. You turn around, and you look at what you have been running from. And what you see is not a monster. What you see is the self you were always supposed to be. The whole self, the integrated self. The self that contains everything you exiled. The rage and the softness. The power and the vulnerability. The certainty and the doubt. The wildness and the discipline. All of it. Not split, not compartmentalized, not projected onto others, but here, in you, waiting to be claimed. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating the exiled parts of the psyche, of bringing the unconscious into consciousness, of withdrawing projections and reclaiming what you have disowned. And it is not a gentle process. It is not comfortable. It is not something you can do while maintaining the life you have been living, because individuation requires the death of the persona, the death of the acceptable self, the death of the version of you that has been performing for an audience your entire life.
And most people will not do this. Most people will reach the edge of individuation and turn back, because the cost is too high. The cost is your identity. The cost is your tribe. The cost is the approval of everyone who has known you as the person you were pretending to be. Individuation means disappointing people. It means becoming someone your family does not recognize. It means living in a way that does not fit the script. And most people would rather stay asleep, stay split, stay safe, than pay that price. But if you do pay it, if you go through the process of integration, something extraordinary happens. You become free. Free from the need for validation, free from the hunger for completion, free from the endless search for someone who will save you, because you have saved yourself. You have reclaimed what you exiled. You have integrated what you projected. You have become the person you were looking for. And this does not mean you stop desiring other people. It does not mean you become a monk, a hermit, a solitary figure who needs nothing from anyone. It means you can finally desire cleanly. You can want someone without needing them. You can love someone without clinging to them. You can be with someone without losing yourself in them, because you are already whole. And from that wholeness, relationship becomes something else, not a solution to incompleteness, but a meeting of two complete beings who are choosing to share their wholeness with each other.
This is what integration does. It frees you from the tyranny of projection. It allows you to see people as they actually are, not as carriers of your unlived life. It allows you to love without need, to desire without desperation, to be with someone without losing yourself. And it allows you to be alone without loneliness, because you are no longer split. You are no longer half a person looking for another half. You are whole, and wholeness does not need completion. Wholeness is already complete. But here is what most people do not understand about integration. Integration is not the end of desire. Integration is the transformation of desire. When you are projecting, your desire is need, it is lack, it is hunger. It is the desperate attempt to get from another person what you refuse to give yourself. And that desire is insatiable, because no matter how much the other person gives you, it will never be enough, because what you actually need is not theirs to give. But when you integrate, when you reclaim what you have projected, desire becomes something else. It becomes choice. It becomes appreciation. It becomes the recognition of another person's beauty, their aliveness, their particularity, without the overlay of need. You see them, you want them, but you do not need them. And that wanting, that clean desire that comes from wholeness rather than lack, is what love actually is.
Jung understood this. He lived it. His relationship with Toni Wolff was a projection for years. She was his anima, his interior beloved, his soul's other, and he was obsessed with her. He needed her. He could not imagine his work, his life, his psyche without her. But over time, through the process of integration, something changed. He began to embody what he had been projecting onto her. He began to live the qualities she represented, the wildness, the intellectual freedom, the refusal to be domesticated. And as he did, the relationship transformed. It did not end, but it was no longer based on need. It was based on choice. And Jung could finally see her as she was, not as his savior, not as his anima, but as a human being, flawed, limited, real. And this is the gift of integration. It allows you to see yourself clearly, to see others clearly, to see that the person you were obsessed with was not the person you thought they were. They were a mirror, and what you saw in them was you. And now that you have reclaimed what you saw, now that you have integrated the projection, you can finally meet them, not as fantasy, but as reality. And that meeting, that love that comes from seeing rather than projecting, is the only love that does not destroy, because it is based on truth, and truth, however painful, is the only foundation that lasts.
Now you understand. Every person you have ever loved was showing you yourself. Every person who has ever broken you was showing you what you needed to integrate. Every obsession was a breadcrumb leading you home. The beloved was never out there. The beloved was the unlived life inside you, and the work was never to find them. The work was to become them. Jung spent his entire life teaching people how to get here, how to stop projecting, how to integrate, how to become whole. And he knew that most people would not do it because the cost is too high. The cost is your identity. The cost is your tribe. The cost is the comfortable lie that someone out there will save you. But he also knew that for the people who did do it, for the people who went through the process of individuation, the reward was everything. The reward was freedom. The reward was love. The reward was the self you were always supposed to be. And now you are here. You have done the work.
You have integrated the interior beloved. You have reclaimed what you projected. You have become what you were seeking. And the hunger is gone. Not because you stopped wanting, but because you stopped needing. And from that place of not needing, you can finally want cleanly. You can desire without desperation. You can love without clinging. You can be with someone without losing yourself.
And the next person you meet, you will not see them as the answer. You will see them as a mirror. But not a mirror reflecting what you lack, a mirror reflecting what you have already become. And in that reflection, you will see yourself, whole, real, alive. And you will see them, also whole, also real, also alive. And you will choose each other, not from need, but from freedom. And that choice, made from integration rather than projection, is what love has always been. Not the feeder dream of recognition, not the desperation of incompleteness, but the meeting of two whole beings who have done the work and who are ready, finally, to see each other clearly. The beloved was never out there. The beloved was always here, inside you, waiting to be reclaimed, waiting to be integrated, waiting to be lived. And now that you have let them in, now that you have become them, you are finally free. Free to love, free to want, free to choose, free to be. And that freedom, that wholeness, that integration is the only thing worth searching for, because it is the only thing that is real. What you want is what you are. What you seek is what you've forgotten. The beloved has been here all along.